I think the very first thing that I'd like to share with you is, ooh, wonderful. The very first thing I'd like to share with you is the fact that we are still learning about learning. And we are a learning organization. We learn from our mistakes. I say to individuals, if you know something, you're not learning. It's only what you don't know that you can truly invest in having a greater understanding. So learning is work. Learning is work. If it comes to you easily, that's a gift. But for most individuals, learning is work. I'd like to begin with our definition of learning. I get to do that because I'm speaking, but I want you to understand the point from which all of this work has begun. Learning is taking in the world around you. Taking in the world around you. Now, for some who work with individuals where there are issues of being able to hear, being able to touch or see, taking in the world around you is different. But in fact, learning starts with taking in the world around you. That's why Tracy, when she talks about science and children, taking in the world around you means many things. It is not simply having information spoken to you. Part 2, taking in the world around you and making sense of it. That's not easy. And so the way in which you make sense of it and I make sense of it, even though we're in the same room, we hear the same words, it does not compute the same way because you are who you are and I am who I am. So taking in the world around you and making sense of it, and here's the part that I think we most often, most frequently miss. Responding appropriately. We rarely provide those opportunities because we are so concerned that you're getting information, not experience. We don't ask you to use judgment. We say, I'm the judge of what you should know and how you should know it. So Let Me Learn takes learning and looks at it differently. It says everyone can learn. Everyone can learn. And everyone does learn. They simply don't learn in the same way. 2 things about learning. It's extraordinarily personal. And it's extraordinarily universal. What's so exciting about who we have present here today is the fact that you represent not only different organizations and different applications of learning, but in fact, each of you brings to the table today your own personal insights, and that's what makes it so rich. Learning is the most personal and the most universal of human experiences. And if we just start with that, then I will begin this formal part of it. What I would like to introduce to you today and how we see this playing out is I'm going to do this overarching picture of what it means to find your way. Then I'm not going to be specific enough for many of you. You'll want more details. You'll want more information. You'll want to have some interaction with it to see if anything I've said makes sense. Okay? And that's all right. Because after me, I have these 2 wonderful individuals who are going to be working with you hands-on in breakout sessions. Actually, I have 4 people. Veronica is going to be leading one breakout session. Noreen is going to be leading the other, ably assisted by Patricia Mayer and Robert Kottkamp. So you're going to have 2 individuals in the breakout sessions working with you. And it's the breakout sessions where you're going to get to actually come to grips or come to some further knowledge of who you are as a learner. It's amazingly simple and amazingly complex. I'm just going to say that, but you knew it. They're going to help get you down into the actual application of this to you as a person. They have 90 minutes to do this. I think that's amazing. So just so I don't leave you frustrated by getting you to a certain point and then having you say, well, okay, where's the rest? The rest follows after a coffee break, and you will be well attended to by the individuals who are going to be facilitating that, all right? Then after lunch, we come back together and we hear from an individual who has used this process in the corporate sector, but also in the manufacturing sector. And so you will hear how this process has worked not just with individuals, but also with the culture and operation. So after lunch, you're going to see more of its application to an organization as it becomes a learning organization. Okay? Just a little roadmap to help us find our way. Now, if I press the right side, is it going to go? Okay. What you have here, by the way, folks, is the text. And this was written in 2010 at actually Noreen's request that we have materials that are not all education-ese, all right? And so she helped guide this publication. We have now generated this into one for young people who are making the transition of school to work, finding your way, navigating your future. This is finding your way, but this is about understanding yourself, navigating your life by understanding yourself, and taking it into the work world. I just like these. I think they're beautiful. I'm intrigued by them. These are compass roses. Compass roses appear on maps, but with our GPSs, we're losing this, folks. This is a wonderful, beautiful thing. Veronica's father refers to the GPS as the lady of the universe, which I think is pretty neat, but we don't have a compass rose with her, all right? The compass rose had a very practical purpose. What was its purpose? Right, give you direction, help you find your way. And what does every compass rose include? Right, that's right. So you're going to know where north, south, east, and west is, all right? Finding your way occurs as you find your way as a learner. Notice there is no one standard compass rose, just as there is no one standard learner. I'm going to emphasize that over and over. What we would like you to do over the course of today, and we can do some exercises and find some of the pages in here on which to do it, is to develop your own personal compass rose, so that you have a sense of the ordinal directional forces. We do have directional forces within us based upon who we are as learners, and they tug and they pull at us. They're not always kind to us, but if you understand them, what can you do when you understand something? What can you do with it? That's right. You now are in charge of it. You can make it work for you. So I would hope that you will leave with a beautiful compass rose, an understanding of yourself as a learner, the directional forces within you, and how you can take and use them within your organization and your personal life. '21st century workforce skills. I was delighted to see individuals here who are concerned about developing workers. individuals who have an understanding of themselves and bring that with intention to the workforce. Fortune 500 companies, everybody is familiar with that phrase. Those are the folks that do pretty well in the economy. In a recent survey of the Fortune 500 companies, there were 5 basic things that they are looking for workforce skills in the 21st century. The number 1 skill is know how to learn. Know how to learn. We teach individuals information. We don't always help them understand how to take in the world around them, make sense of it so they can respond appropriately. And so this is what we're focusing on. This is a compass rose. This is your compass rose. This is what we hope that you will be able to develop, and work with today. At the center of your compass rose is learning. I'm going to give you one example. I'm going to give you a historic example. There are going to be people here who know more about John Harrison than I do. I'm positive of that. But I think that he represents well how is it possible for us to succeed economically, not succeed in school, get out of school and succeed economically, and never feel good about ourselves. Because who we are as a learner defines us. It is so central. Who we are as a learner is oftentimes misunderstood and misperceived by others because they're saying to themselves, I wouldn't have done it that way. And I'm not sure that's the right way. So we oftentimes use learning issues to judge others and oftentimes to diminish what they can purposefully do. John Harrison did not come from any schooling. In fact, he was quite sickly. He oftentimes was on a small cot in his father's workshop. His father was a watchmaker. He had a mind. He took in the world around him very differently. And he made sense of it very differently. And he didn't always respond appropriately. It took him 32 years to get the Royal Society of Science and Astronomy to accept his answer to what to do about the issue of measuring longitude. 32 years. He devised an incredible machine as a part of a contest. And what the society said, you appear to be so illiterate, so incapable of communicating, that we don't believe you made this. And they sent his competitor to bring it to them, this machine. And the competitor, dropped it 2 flights of stairs. The Royal Society said, if you made it the first time, you can make it a second time. 16 years. So when the minister talks about persistence, determination, right? He was quite an amazing learner, this John Harrison. Many schemes have been devised, but all to no purpose until that heaven-taught artist, John Harrison, arose. These are just 2 of the chronometers. This is actually probably the 5th or 6th iteration. This was the final. But you know the importance of being able to measure longitude in any kind of, with no vision of the skies, without being able to use the stars to guide. It saved literally millions of pounds in shipping and loss of life. And here this crackpot, this uneducated individual, solves this mystery. And just because you're at a distance, and although you're not my age, if I were sitting where you are, I could not necessarily read this. So I shall read it to you. A great man with the wisdom to devise and the courage to perform that which he lacked the language to explain. We want to talk about entrepreneurs, not always the most articulate of individuals. They are not able frequently to they don't understand themselves as learners and what it is that makes it so difficult to be able to explain and what others expect in that explanation. And so this is very clearly within them, but not articulated, either orally or in writing. And we judge people on that basis. Well, here's a problem. This is a sample of his writing. That's one sentence. I chose to take one sentence that did not include any cursing, but he frequently cursed about the individuals with whom he was struggling. I find it fascinating that the same kind of language that might be used today was used several hundred years ago to express frustration. That is, and I'm a former English teacher. So for me, it's fascinating to see, when in doubt, use a semicolon. Let's just string these ideas together, right? And I used to find that with my own students. What do we do with a semicolon? Do I split this sentence and make it into two? No, let's just put a semicolon in it and keep going. Well, that was the John Harrison approach. And so when he was asked, because not only did you supply the invention, you had to write a paper explaining it, and you also needed to be able to orally present your explanation to the committee. He struggled significantly with both. Such men have worked the deliverance of nations and their own greatness. Their hearts are their books. ETC, where's my ETC representative? Their hearts are their books. Events are their tutors. Great actions are their eloquence. Now, the goal of Let Me Learn is not to leave people where we find them. Just like we want organizations to be learning, we want individuals to be learning. And so we work with individuals who struggle with the same issues as a John Harrison to be able to articulate their thoughts, put in writing what it is they're doing, socially connect with another individual, whether one-on-one or in a group. I actually know a story from ETC. A student had come in and spoken with a counselor, had not succeeded in what I'm going to say regular school, and said, I'm just not very good at communicating. All the while was texting someone else during that conversation. The thumb never stopped. That's communication, folks. Texting may not be the way in which we want to see full expression, but it is a point at which we can start to help that individual get over the sense that I'm not good at communicating. So we start with learners where they are, and we move out from there. When we find our way, we start by identifying where we are in our understanding of learning. Now, when you have your compass rose, remember, we know that because we know the ordinals, we know our directions, we have our directional forces. So true north is something we don't take time to really identify for ourselves. Let me just take a minute there. True north is your passion. What is it that you will not give up? That it is the force that drives you. I've done a lot of different things in my life, for work. I've done janitorial work many times to be able to have housing while I was going to school, or my husband was going to school. I've done that several times. I have worked, actually, I've done that amazing number of times, whenever. I have been an urban planner. I have been a teacher, a high school, secondary school teacher of English. I also taught German, but only till we got to the subjunctive case, and then it was beyond me. I moved into culture. We moved into foods and other kinds of experiences. I have also worked as a supervisor. I've worked in a glass factory. I've culled glass. I have done labor. I have done teaching, and I have done professorial work. All of it, I have had to learn. I never walked into a situation where I knew what to do and do it well. I had to change. I had to find balance. This is the other thing about learning, you learn to self-regulate. You read the situation, take in the world around you, you read it. You make sense of it. This is what I'm really facing. And then that final piece, where the self-regulation really comes in, you respond appropriately. And when you don't respond appropriately, you learn from that, right? So when you go to find your way, you want to start by identifying your true north. What is your passion? What is it that you're not willing to give up? What is it that has you get up every morning and make the commitment that when the sun goes down, you will in fact have connected with that which drives you and gives you hope and projects you into making a difference in that world in which you live, whether it's your family, whether it is your employment, whether it is your social connections. It is your passion. But besides your true north, you need to be able to drive your learning processes so that you achieve the outcomes that you have set. So directional tools consist of powers of observation, doggedness to find solutions. Notice that persistence issue keeps coming up, even in historic situations, and workmanship. Even so, Harrison lived and he died unaware and oftentimes actually bewildered. Like, why don't people accept what I'm saying? Why don't they see my passion? Why don't they believe what I'm about? Because he didn't understand himself. He didn't have a clear sense of his compass rose. True north, directional forces, how they affect learning, how they affect how you take in the world around you, make sense of it, and respond appropriately. I'm going to suggest that the greatest challenge of the 21st century remains the same challenge that faced Harrison. We've made great strides with technology. Tracy would tell you all the different things that have occurred in science instruction, all the things we're able to do now in order to use distance learning, Skype, GoToMeeting, all types of ways in which we can connect to other people. But one thing stays consistent. If you do not know who you are as a learner and you do not know how to use it with intention, you will face the same frustrations, the same struggles, and the same lack of success over a lifetime. And what we've learned, and let me learn, is because everybody learns, everyone can take this information and develop an understanding of him or herself, regardless of your learning challenges. It's one of the most freeing and one of the most positive things that children and parents do together, because it's encouraging. Instead of tearing you down and saying you're broken, it builds you up and says you have a great deal to offer. So what are the challenges to recognize your true north? To recognize your true north. And that's a developing piece through adolescence. But as you come to young adulthood, the true north should be something that becomes more and more clear to you. To acknowledge the use of your compass rose, that means your directional forces, that which drives your learning. And to chart your course, stay the course, and come safe home, having achieved your life's destination. Now, Bob Grandin can tell you what happens to young people as they go into adulthood if they do not have that sense of purpose. And if their sense of purpose has clashed with that of their instructors or their formal schooling, how diminishing that can be. Emotionally, socially. So the breakthrough that we think we have been able to develop over the 20 years is to understand that learning is found in the interface of your brain and mind. I just thought I'd throw in that controversial piece here. So I'm going to see if I can help you do a hands-on experience. Colin? Turn to the person next to you. It takes two people to do this, all right? So grab somebody. All right? One of the two makes two fists. Makes two. You want to make the two fists? All right. Yeah, there we go. All right. Everybody, so one person has two fists. The other person in this twosome does not. Okay, so one person makes two fists, and then you turn them vertically. There, okay? So I'm just going to turn Colin around so you can see my model here. It's kind of an atlas look to it, Colin. I just want you to know. This is the brain. I'd like you, the person who has not got the fists, to take your hands and put your fingers on that part that holds your brain. Any difficulty there? No, we know where that is, right? Okay, so you put it right, there you go. All right, that's the brain. The brain is physical. The brain is physical. It is an incredible machine, right? The only way you learn is to have stimuli go into this machine. So how many stimuli, I'm hinting here, how many stimuli are available to you to start your learning? 5, that's right. I had one of my editors who said, really? Only 5? She'd watched too much TV and got this whole sixth sense thing going. All right, but there are 5 senses, and those 5 senses are your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, and your hands, or some means by which you can feel, all right? So there's these 5. We'll do this just so we can get this on film. We've got the brain and stimuli. That is the only way Anything gets into the learning system. Okay. But that's not where learning occurs. That's where stimuli enter the system. Then we've got this thing down here called the mind. The mind. Now, I want the person who had taken his or her hands and placed them on where your brain is, right? I want you to take those same hands and put them on your mind. So, Jackie, what you gonna do? Oh, nice try. You know. Here's the issue. Our mind is not a physical entity. Now, all teachers want to believe it is because they feel that if you have the bum in the chair, they've got your mind in the room with them, right? But tell me what else happens to that mind. Right, I've already watched it this morning. I know that mind is going outside of this room. And that's the thing. Human consciousness allows us to go anywhere. Brain, 5 stimuli. Mind, okay? But something happens between the brain and the mind. They have different chores to do. All right? So the brain's job is to process the stimuli. But it still remains the firing of neurons. It is neurochemicals. That's what it is. It's not Maltese. It is not maths. It is not musical notes. It is still stimuli being processed. This is not my work, all right? All of the work that we have used in this conceptual piece is based upon the most recent and up-to-date brain-mind science. But what happens is called the brain-mind interface. Something has to occur between the brain and the mind to translate stimuli into symbolic representation, such as language, such as notes, such as Braille. There are thousands and thousands of symbols that our mind translates for us. So you can't learn without this. You can't learn without this. We contend you're not going to do too well in that translating thing if you don't have the brain-mind interface. Then the mind gets this, and it has to work. That's why I say learning is work, because the mind has to, first of all, translate the stimuli into symbolic representation, followed by, I got to store this stuff. Where am I going to store it? And so we have the declarative memory, and we have non-declarative memory. Declarative memory is when you're asked to hang on to facts, information, so names. Today, both Veronica and I are sitting here as you're going through telling us who you are, trying to take notes. Why? We're taking that audio sound, trying to translate it into the symbols of that will help us remember your name. So the mind lands up dealing with declarative memory, taking information and storing it, and then being able to retrieve it. That's always the toughest part. And the non-declarative memory. And that memory is muscle memory. It's also your values, your beliefs. I'm just going to pick on you. Could you tell me the day in your life, possibly the date in the year, when your mother told you to wash your hands before you eat food? Right. And it's there because you do that, don't you? Right. And that's in your non-declarative. Those are repetitive behaviors that you do not think about, but you have, in fact, been ingrained because somebody taught you to keep doing that. So the non-declarative memory is very powerful because guess what else sits in non-declarative? Tell me the class that was the most frustrating for you in school. Was there any?
Yeah, grade 9 math, I think.
Okay. So tell me about the instructor.
Her just wanted a name, or she was... she
Not
was,
the names that you gave her.
I think I'll say some of the boys in the class felt prejudiced, and that led to frustration.
Right. So I'm just going to ask you a little bit about how many years ago was that experience?
My goodness, 15 maybe?
Okay. Those are the kinds of memories that sit in non-declarative. They're experiences that were unresolved, that they wallow, and they continue to feed you a memory of discomfort or frustration. So I might not be able to tell you some very important things that have happened in my life, but I can tell you Lucille Fredine embarrassed me when I received my first watch. It was a Christmas present from my parents. It was a Cinderella watch. It was, for me, unexpected and beautiful. And then Lucille asked me to tell time. What time is it, Christine? I didn't know how to read a watch. I just liked the watch because it was a pretty piece of jewelry with Cinderella on it, for heaven's sakes. Now I have to do something practical with my beautiful Cinderella watch, and I can't. Now, Lucille didn't intend to embarrass me. She didn't intend to put in my non-declarative memory something that happened, I'm going to say, 64 years ago. But it did. So our non-declarative memories, thank you, really can fill up with negative experiences. And if we don't rid them, they sit down there. They do not go away, and we have an emotive response when anything similar to that comes up. So this looks simple. Stimuli, brain, mind, declarative memory, non-declarative memory. But this is a powerhouse. Now, what we have added to this model are 4 patterns. They filter the stimuli that come from the brain as the brain's processing it and trying to get it into our mind. It's these 4 patterns, and we didn't start out with 4, but that's how the data factor analyzed. And those filters or patterns affect how we use our directional forces. So the breakthrough for us occurred when we were able to identify there really is something that happens in this transference of stimuli prior to being translated into symbolic representation. And why? Why does Noreen hear these things and Valerie does not? They're in the same room, they're 4 feet apart, they look alert. Because they're filters, when a filter is almost closed, the stimuli don't make it through. They just dissolve. They just disappear. And sometimes our filters are so wide open that it just gushes through. It's almost overwhelming because there's so much of it. That's the model. Thank you. You're good. I'm going to show you this now in flat form. It just trickles down like this on the screen. But I think it's very important to know that we take very seriously the science. And as we look, for example, at MRIs of individuals who are doing different learning activities, Arizona State University, exceptional in its educational technology and its use of it for learning, looked at students who were reading text. They were reading the same text. They had pulse, they had brain scans, they had all the equipment you could imagine. And then they were interviewed about what was going on in their minds. Why did they read? Oh, eye scan. That was the most important because they wanted to track where the eyes were on the page. We use those filters, those patterns, they affect us strongly, and they are the things that most affect our compass rose of learning. So if you know how these filters play within you, you have a much better chance to be able to self-regulate and use them differently. That's it. So what's your next question? I'm set. How? How do I know how these filters are working with me? And so what we did is it took us 6 years to develop an instrument to capture that, and we've continued to refine it. And yesterday we were working with an app, a new app, and comparing the outcomes of people who had taken this in hard copy 10 to 15 years ago and now taking it with the app in that form to see whether or not their patterns had changed over time or stayed the same. Because this is the most steady state part of our learning, our learning processes. And it's very interesting to see. We had originally done test retest 3 years out, 5 years out, but we hadn't continued 10 years out. But because we had assembled, we have 24 individuals, 25 with Tracy from the US who are here participating, and we have our Let Me Learn staff, and they've been involved for a number of years. So it was really interesting to see when they retook the instrument in this new digital form, how well it compared to the original. That's exciting for us because it again continues to confirm. If you know, therefore, your filters or patterns, and you can develop strategies by which to use them to create greater balance in how you process the world around you, how you take it in, how you process it for understanding, and then how you learn to respond appropriately. So the interface, this is pedagogically, this is now considered a review. You have already experienced some of this. This is just reviewing it. And all of that is in here. Okay. Each of those 4 filters has within it thoughts, actions, and feelings. So it's not simply, do I know this or not know this? It affects how you feel about yourself as a learner. It affects the actions that you take. And it definitely affects how you think about doing a specific task. So here's the flat picture. Now these form in vitro. They are not genetic. We've studied over 100 and probably now close to 110 pair of identical twins who do not have the same learning processes. We have not found, and we've looked at both children, identical twins as children, and identical twin adults. They form as a part of our neuroreceptor system, and again, as it also functions when it sends out impulses, and if it gets it back, it will continue to use and develop it. If it doesn't, it seems to shrivel. But children do not have not inherited the same patterns as their parents. And therefore, when it comes to doing school and wanting to encourage your child, it's really vital that you understand their learning processes, which can be very different than yours. It's important for the tutor to understand the learning processes of the individual with whom he or she is working. But here's the other important point. We say to children, the world does not come to you. Even though I live in the US and I think that we have made some glaring mistakes by letting children believe that the world revolves around them. It's kind of a misconception of the earth revolving around the sun or the sun revolving around the earth. That's just a little social statement on my part. But what we do seek to have them understand is, BJ, you're responsible for your learning. And I'm going to introduce to you how to take that responsibility and grow it. And when you have exercised that over a period of time, you become a candidate for employment, a candidate to work in a specific situation, that you rise to the top because you can articulate who you are and how you can be a part of an organization, a team, and what you're going to bring to it and how you're going to function. And those are the candidates who have extraordinary success at being employed. So one of the things we do, once you learn about your learning processes, you develop a personal learning profile. And that profile, or compass rose, is what you use for interacting with others. You share that. It opens doors. The 4 filters, and these are very, very brief. The book gives you in-depth definitions, explanations, examples. So sequence is about order, planning, organization, lists, checking things off of lists, feeling great as you're checking more and more. Precision is about accuracy, detail, information. Technical reasoning is about problem solving. And what's interesting is this is the pattern of the most words. This is the pattern of the fewest words. And those who use technical reasoning at a high level, use first level, they understand what I'm going to say. And that is, they think without words. They can manipulate spatially all types of things. I was in a group with Noreen. I was working with some of her plant operators, and I'd given them a puzzle that involved building. And they didn't get it. Didn't get it. So I looked at my watch and I looked at the schedule and said, we got to do something. So I said, let's move on. I couldn't get them to move. Until that puzzle was solved, we were going nowhere, right? Because that is a pattern that is driven to solve, to complete, not necessarily talk about. Get in and do. And then confluence is where we have ideas and uniqueness, and we were willing to take risks with them. So one of the things I wanted to tell the minister was, if you're dealing with entrepreneurs, they need a certain amount of confluence. And if they don't have that, they need to partner with someone so that they have a wholeness to that team. I have plenty of confluence. That's never been my problem. My problem has been having sufficient sequence to organize my ideas, to have a plan, to stick to the plan. If you'll notice, please, this is not a long book. I have enough precision, but Colin, where's the other book? Oh, you gave the other book away. My name is on that because he is very kind and he always is socially correct. He said my name had to be on it. That, it's a misrepresentation is what it is. It's wonderful people, and let me learn, who are higher in precision, who did the work of the research. I've done plenty of research. That's not the issue, but the amount of research, and when Colin said we need a compendium that represents 20 years, I said, go for it. because do not have that kind of patience to work with that many words. So part of using this is not just for yourself, it's how to work well with others. Compass rose. All of us have one. It is unique to each of us. It forms differently in each of us, but it starts with a true north and an understanding of our learning processes. So what we invite you to do today, through the Let Me Learn process, we'd like you to explore, discuss, discover your compass rose, and then safe home. Thank you very much.